Welcome to the Junk Drawer Mamas with your hosts Dina Tricino and Christina Queen. We are so glad you're here with us as we sort through the drama and the trauma of life's hidden struggles to uncover hope and healing with a side of humor on this roller coaster ride we like to call extreme parenting. Whether you're raising a child or a teen with special needs, dealing with challenging behaviors, tackling addiction, mental health issues, or working through the trauma associated with foster care, it's a lot, and we get it. But you don't have to do this alone. So grab a cozy chair, settle in, and let's take this journey together.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Junk Drawer Mamas podcast. We are on episode 21. We are excited to be back with you. We are going to follow up on the episode of fears that special needs moms face. And we kind of took a break from that because we had Mother's Day and we did a special Mother's Day episode, which I think was awesome. And so I just suggest that everybody go and check that one out. We gave a new perspective on Mother's Day because it doesn't always look like a Hallmark card, and that's what the episode was named. So anyway, this time we wanted to break down a little bit more. The first episode on fear, it really kind of went into more of grieving. We talked about Christina's story of when she lost her child and how terrible that was. And then honestly, sometimes what we think is fear is just grief that we're dealing, like with the letting go of the future that you think you wanted to have, or the future that you wish your child would have, and all of that. So there was a lot of letting that go. This is kind of an ongoing grief process. I've been sharing this on my daily dose that I share on my Specially Empowered Moms YouTube channel. I've been talking about that because it's been 14 years for me. And I'm going to be honest, I still have times where I'm grieving the life that I thought I wanted, because this is a very challenging life. And I only have one child at home. Christina's got 11 at home right now. So it's not probably what she had planned for it to be, even though her and her husband, I would say, picked up the mantle that God called them to do, to minister to the orphans. That's part of a command that God has given us in his scripture about taking care of the widows and orphans. And so being a foster mom and an adoptive mom is a huge calling on her life. But that doesn't mean that she wanted to do that with a lot of stress and a lot of striving and a lot of pain that she has to go through and her family has to go through and walk through. So we talked about that. There's a grieving that we do because we don't know whether our special needs child is going to have the kind of future that we want. Right. I shared that I don't know if Gracie's going to ever get married or have children. I don't know if she even can do that and what that's going to look like for us. I just know we're never going to be empty nesters. It's okay to feel that way, but honestly, we want to try to do our best to empower you and equip you to understand and walk and partner with God on this journey.
Yes.
Because whatever he's called you to do, he's going to equip you for. But he didn't call us to do this so that we could just suffer through life or that we could give up our life. That is not at all what it is.
Without peace.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's just a mindset shift, and so again, we could probably go more to detail on that. But this time for the part 2 of this episode, we wanted to talk a little bit more about what are some of the other fears that we have. And I'm going to be looking down because I have a lot of notes and I want to make sure that we get this. And it's a lot to try to memorize. So I just wanted to be honest with you that I don't have all this memorized. And a lot of times, we just come together with our own perspectives and our own stories. We're not experts at this. I would say we might be experts at being moms, but, but anyway, even moms navigating extreme circumstances. But honestly, like when it comes to statistics or things that we had to do research on, we still have to refer back to that. So before I dig into that, I want to give Christina a chance to say hi and just share anything that she wants to share on this topic or anything else for that matter.
Hey to everybody. I'm completely with you with all the fear stuff that, we talked about and where we were headed. There was a lot of fear around the area of grief. I think the reason why we took the whole last episode in that is because a lot of fear is based in loss and what is it going to look like if this doesn't happen? What am I going to lose? And so I think that's why we kind of went so heavily into that last time, because there was a lot more involved in that than what we even realized. And honestly,
I would say last episode was healing for us.
Right. It was.
Yeah, it was.
And that's a huge item in the junk drawer. And I feel like even when you pull that out, it always sinks back in there. It always finds its place back in the, you're like, how'd that get in there again? I thought we already pulled that out. I thought I already cleaned that out of the junk drawer. And it's back in there because grief is something that there's huge variations in the kind of grief, and it might be something little or it might be something massive, anywhere from losing a child to maybe you lost a job. I have honestly been having a little bit of a hard time lately. Our littlest one just turned 1, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they've got 17 more years of all of this. I mean, on one
That's a
hand,
lot when you're almost 50, Christina.
I know
To
I'm
have
gonna be
17 more years of
49.
parenting.
I'm getting ready to
Yeah.
turn 49 here in a few
Mhm.
days. And I know, and when we get in that mindset too, you start to kind of get tired of daily stuff. We were talking
Yeah.
about that before we got on the call, just the daily stuff, and you kind of get worn down. So then the devil very quickly can get in there with the fear stuff. What if this? What if that? And then you start getting into that, oh yeah, if I didn't do this, if I wouldn't have chosen this, or if I didn't have maybe a child with special needs, or if I didn't have 50 kids in my house, man, I told my husband the other day, I was like, man, we would be retired or so. I mean, like we would just be chilling somewhere, instead of like our day from morning until night is like, don't do that, go do this, don't do, like breaking up the fights, and like on the weekends, nobody else, I don't feel like, would understand this except for somebody else that had this huge amount of kids. It's like they go upstairs, we get them to their rooms, and it's like, okay, now we can relax, and then we're asleep not that long after because we're so tired. And it's like, does anybody else understand this life?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but
I think it's funny because you said breaking up fights, and then somebody, like maybe they don't understand that because they maybe only have a single child, or if you've got any kids. I know when I first married Doug, he already had 3 kids from a previous marriage that he had custody of. So I, was brought into the family, and it was instant mom to 3 kids, and then we, immediately had our son Tony. So I had really no experience with parenting at all. But his kids, the 2 boys, honestly, even our daughter Gina too, they fought a lot, like physical fights, to the
Yep.
point where somebody was bleeding. It was always like a bloody nose, and they, they definitely had like the thinner blood vessels in their nose, so anything would make them have a bloody nose. But I didn't know, and I was like, they were always like wrestling around or fighting, and it would start off with just playful wrestling, then would turn into someone's mad and crying and
Yep.
bleeding. I'm like, is this what parenting is? And then you
like
laugh
it.
about that. It feels like that, but you do
Yeah.
when you have a lot of kids, or especially if you got a lot of boys or whatever, they're fighting,
boys are a
and
whole
you
different
just like
breed.
you're so exhausted by that,
Boys.
But so anyway, I know parents can understand that. But the
Yeah.
other day, I was talking about going grocery shopping. I like to be able to go if I can, possibly without Gracie, because it's just so much easier.
Yes.
So I was describing what it's like to go with her, and it's like, you already dread it because I know I'm going to say, Gracie, get off the floor. No, put that down. No, put that back. No, we can't have that. I already said no. And then it's like, you have to go to the bathroom again. So I went through this whole scenario. It was like the stand-up comedy routine. And every time I explain that, my mom always laughs, because it's like, I just try to describe going shopping. It's like this big ordeal just to go to the store to get a few items. You know what I mean? And so it's like so much easier if somebody could just watch her so that I could go.
Oh yeah.
But other moms do get it, but you do feel overwhelmed by that. You're like, is this what my life is going to be like? And you got 17 more years of it. So do I.
Yeah.
I'm going to have 17 more years. I'm going to have more than 17 more years.
Yeah.
Of it.
And
I'm just
Izzy,
saying.
of course, is only 2 also, and has Down syndrome. So we, there's no way to know yet what that's going to look like.
No, you don't. You really don't.
Right?
And I do hope that Gracie does get to the point where she's not rolling around on the grocery store floor, at 20 something years old. So anyway, I have to bring a little dustpan and cloth to wipe her off from the stores, because her clothes are filthy when she lays on the floor. And it's like, get up. Every single aisle that we go in, she has to, lay on the floor. Yes. And so that's even a fear of mine. Like, if we're talking about fears, let's go into that now.
Yeah.
Is it ever going to be different? My fear is like, will we ever be able to go out in public where there isn't a meltdown? She isn't saying, I'm tired, I want to go. She doesn't, because way she feels like she has a hard time processing her emotions, or just being self-aware of what's going on, self-regulating. I guess that's probably the better word for that. So if she doesn't want to be there, she wants to go, and she will pitch a fit until we leave.
Right.
I might have just gotten there and I've got a lot to do, and I have no one to watch her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I have to get these errands done, and she's just going to have to get up off the floor and go. But if she's tired, or she's, her legs hurt, or she just doesn't feel like it, then she wants to go, and she will not stop so it turns into a battle.
Right.
So there's a part of me that fears the future of, will this ever get easier?
I'm assuming
it will, but I'm just saying, there's that fear that I have.
We have
like
the
that.
hope. Obviously, we don't ever want to lose hope in that. But I've been feeling that so much lately too. And I was just thinking, one of the kids was saying something about going out to eat. And I was like, well, Sunday's my birthday, and I would love to go out to eat. But then I'm like, we tried that like a couple weeks ago, and we just went to a simple sit down restaurant. Went in there, and I was like, no, I don't even want, it's not fun. It is not fun. When this kid's fighting with this kid's taking this kid's food. And it's just like, I thought about that when somebody said something about going out to eat, my heart kind of sank. I'm like, is this ever going to be any easier? I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh. And it just feels so heavy at times. And it's like, it is the fear. It is that fear of, is this it? Is this my life forever?
Yeah.
And when we get into that place, because, and I'm saying that because I have been there way too much lately, just because you start thinking, you start looking at other people, just what we call normal. It feels like everybody else has got normal lives, and everybody else is going, and you're like, I can't even go
I don't even know
out
what
to eat.
normal is,
Right.
honestly.
And I'm like, I was talking about, I was like trying to pick like a restaurant. I was like, maybe we could go, someplace to eat for my birthday, because we don't ever celebrate like anything, any big deal. But I was like, well, we could go to Golden Corral. My 17 was like, let's go to someplace better, like Applebee's. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
hey,
gosh.
I,
High
I I'm
expectations
all
there,
for I'm
jeepers.
all for Applebee's. I like it. I said, but realistically, you have to sit there and wait for your food to come out. That's fighting amongst the little kids, throwing whatever. I mean, you could say, oh gosh, your kids must be brats. No, they're kids. They're coming from all different homes, all different trauma, all different ways they were raised. They're kids, and two 8-year-olds, two 4-year-olds, two you name it, we got it. You're dealing with kids just being kids too, simply being kids, sitting at a table, waiting, hungry after church, waiting for their food to come out. Then when they're done with their food, then you got the whole other stretch of waiting for everybody else to be done before it's time to leave. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. That does not sound like fun to me. How
Yeah.
about we go to Golden Corral and they can just eat and eat and eat the whole time we're that might sound bad
So
too, but
we've
I'm
done
like,
that with Gracie, but then
right,
I have to follow her because she can't really get the food for herself without
right.
making a mess or whatever. So I'm stressed out because I'm trying to make sure
Well,
that she's able to do that. I can't even imagine doing that with a whole bunch of
Well,
little
so
kids
the
too.
the older, like 12 or 13-year-old and 17 or whatever, they will partner up with
They'll
one.
help. You
Like
got
they're
a
going up
partner
to the
buddy.
buffet and be like, "Hey, go with
Yeah.
them. They're going to get it."
So
But I
sometimes
find
having
that it
bigger
keeps them
families is helpful.
right. Yeah, it can
Yeah.
be, but it's helpful because then they all go up and then they get what they want. But then the
Yeah.
little kids go up and they can stay busy with that. And
Mhm.
buffets, I know aren't everybody's cup of tea, but you do what works. But
Yeah.
I started thinking, I'm like, am I ever going to just be able to just go sit down at like a restaurant and just enjoy just
Mhm.
and then in my head I'm like, nope, nope, that's you're done with. And of course that's the enemy, but I'm like just hearing, nope, you're done with that. Your life's done. You ain't never gonna
Mhm.
have anything funny.
So there's a couple things
I'm
I
sorry
wanted
for
to
myself.
Yeah, there's a couple things I wanted to piggyback off of what you just said. You said you do what works for you. And we've
Right,
said this so many times on this podcast that if it's extreme to you, it's extreme. It
right,
might not be extreme to us. Your
right.
situation, I think, would be extreme to everybody. It doesn't matter who's walking through that. But I'm just saying, not
Well, that made
everybody
me
that
feel better,
has,
Dina.
a special needs child, or not everybody that has a child with Down syndrome like Gracie, it feels like it's extreme. It feels
Right.
extreme to me.
Hmm.
It's hard to manage her. A lot of
Right.
times I don't have support. So I have the opposite of that, where I just don't have a lot of body support. You know what I'm saying? I have a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people that understand or even encourage me or pray for me or whatever, but I don't have physical support outside of my mom taking her the one day a week if she's feeling okay. I don't really have a lot of people that can take her. So I have the majority of the responsibility of that. But you said you do what works for you.
Yeah.
Okay. And so somebody else might think, I would never go to Golden Corral or Applebee's. But first of all, you've got a lot of mouths to feed, so it has to be economical. Otherwise,
Right.
you can't do it. And you can't always just stay home, and you do want to have a life too. So you do what works for you,
Hmm.
no matter whether somebody else agrees with it or not. So I liked that you're basically giving us permission that it doesn't really matter what somebody else
Yeah.
says. If you've got to go there and do that just so that you can
Hmm.
get out of the house, and do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway, I guess that adds
Yeah.
another fear of like, what are people going to think if I go out in public with all these kids?
Well, I
You know,
have that has honestly
what are
been
people
a
going to say
concern,
is a
is like,
big fear of
well, and
moms
for
that are
such
dealing
a
with
long
that.
time, it was really a big deal to me. Like, oh my gosh, is everybody going to think like I'm, and you've got this whole fear too in
What is
foster
wrong with
parenting
that woman? And
anyways.
why does she have so many children?
Right. Well, in foster parenting too, you're
Do they
like,
all?
is somebody going to look at me and think that I'm doing something wrong and like call or something crazy like
Yeah.
that? Because you've heard of these stupid things. And I'm always like, I felt like for so many years, I'd go around almost ready to apologize for something my kids did. We went on a cruise and we had 10 kids. No, 8. We had 8. And I usually like really, really keep track of my kids, and my 2 older boys at the time were probably 8, maybe 10, 12, around those ages. And I lost sight of them because we were at the little buffet thing on the cruise. And I'm like, oh man, oh. And I look over, they're getting their food and they're doing their thing, or whatever. And everybody's trying to get back over to the table. And I always try to really keep a good eye on my kids so that like in settings like that, they're not disrupting things. They're not driving other people nuts. They're not being crazy or doing weird stuff. I mean, you know how kids can do. So I was always super mindful of that and tried to just make sure that I really supervised well. And we go to sit down, and as we go to sit down at the table, this older couple starts walking towards us, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, what happened? Like my heart just sank, honestly. I'm like, what did they do? What happened? They
What did
came
one of my
over and they
kids
started,
do?
right, and they said, are these your boys? And I'm like, oh no, what did they do? What did they do? And I started like kind of having this little internal panic, like ready to apologize to this couple. And they're like, we just wanted to tell you, your boys were so polite and so kind. And
Ah,
they were
so
just
cool.
so, and they were like, there was a family here earlier and it was so horrible sitting next. And they're like, we just wanted to tell you it was a pleasure dining next to you guys, sitting next to you guys. It was just, and I'm like,
It makes your
I'm
mama
like
heart
this
feel
side,
good.
right? Because we don't see what everybody else sees. And that's a big
Yeah.
fear. We're always afraid somebody's going to see or screw up. Somebody's going to see. And me and my husband have taken the kids out to eat so many times when they were younger and have had people come up to our table. One time a pastor came up and he paid for our whole meal. He was like, are these your kids? We explained to him, yeah, we adopted them all. And he was like, these kids are so well behaved and all this. And we're over here like, we looked at each other like, oh my gosh, we were going nuts over here trying to keep them calmed down.
Yeah.
Because that's what it feels like. And there is that fear. You can go too far if you're not careful and try to correct every little thing. And I think in the years of parenting over the last, especially, I don't know, probably 5 to 10 years, I feel like probably even more so in the last 5 years, I've like felt like myself step back and say, within reason. Now, I want my kids to behave and not to be crazy and not to scream in the person behind his ears, or not turn around and smack them or throw food at them or nothing. But within reason, we still need to let our kids be kids. You can't apologize for your kids being kids. Your kids need to be kind. They need to behave and not be out of control. But they also still need to have permission to be kids and not to have to be perfect, and us not to be stressed out around that, around somebody thinking that your kids are horrible just because they're being kids. So that
And
is a
honestly,
fear
at
of
the end of the
man.
day,
That's a fear
no,
of man. What is somebody
yeah,
going to think of me? That,
yes,
my kids are out of control, or I'm a horrible mom and I don't know what I'm doing. And what
right.
the heck is she doing with all these kids? Because she has no clue what she's doing. Trust me, I felt like that before, but
But you were saying that's a fear of man, and that's how the enemy comes in. Because at the
yes,
end of the day, who cares what they think? You will probably never see
right.
those people again.
Exactly.
Whether they're on a cruise, you'll definitely never see those
And
people
the
again.
odds
Or
are
if
they're not even
they're in
thinking
a
what we think
restaurant
they're
that you
thinking.
frequent. No.
Right.
And even if they are, it doesn't matter. They
That
don't
can
know
be
the
their
whole story.
right. And that can
They
be
don't
their
know that
issue.
was the only time you got to get out for
And
months. You know what I mean?
why do we even feel the need to apologize for certain things? One of my kids might say something. One of our foster kiddos, he's very just like, he might say, oh my gosh, that person over there is old, or oh my gosh, that person's fat. We were coming out of an amusement park a few years ago, and one of them was like, they were pushing somebody in that was in a wheelchair, and they're like, where are they going to? They can't even ride anywhere. They're in a wheelchair. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, why would you say that? And I'm like low key freaking out over here. Like, oh my gosh, I hope they didn't hear you. And kids are just, they're learning. Their thought was not like, there's a lot of other things that they can do. They're just being kids. They're still learning. Everything in the world is new to them.
Mhm.
And coming from some of the backgrounds, especially my kids have come from, I feel like, I shouldn't have to say, I'm sorry, they didn't mean, you were fat. They're just learning what words are right, are proper to
Gracie's
say, what
always
words
like,
are
are they
not okay.
pregnant? Oh, you're having a
Right.
baby. She would say that to a man when she was really little. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
And we're over here like freaking out inside, like, oh my gosh. One of
I'm
my kids,
mortified that she just told this
well,
man
one
that
of
he
my
looks
kiddos,
pregnant.
we were in Hobby Lobby this one time, and that you know how everybody's Amber Alert goes off, and they're like, everybody's phones. You can hear them all throughout Hobby Lobby. And I had my two girls, and Mackenzie was probably like 6 at the time. And they're like, "What is that?" And they're like looking around, and I'm like, somebody took. I read it, read the description, not to them, but I was like, somebody took somebody's kid, and I said, there's bad people sometimes that do bad things, and somebody kidnapped a kid and they're looking for him. I explained it to her in the simplest way I could for a 6-year-old and whatever. And I said, sometimes there's bad people that do bad things. And I explained it to her, and we're walking through the store, and she sees this little old lady standing there, and out of nowhere, she's just like points right at this lady, loud as can be, and she was like, she probably like and I'm
Oh
like,
my gosh.
I like rounded that corner, like, I mean, I was like mortified. I didn't even say anything. I couldn't say anything. I just tried to get out of there. Honestly, I just tried to get out of there as quickly. But kids say stuff. They embarrass
We
us.
should post a
They
question in our Junk Drawer Mama community. What's the most embarrassing thing your kids ever said in public?
Oh my
That would be
gosh,
awesome
yeah.
to just see what some of those
Oh
comments
my gosh,
are.
some of the stuff
Yeah.
that they say and some of the stuff that they do, you're
Yeah.
just like, we're leaves you just sitting there like completely
Yeah.
mortified. But
So I guess
honestly,
that
they
would be
are being
another
kids.
fear. Is our
Right.
kids going to say something that's embarrassing or whatever?
Right.
Especially again, if you have a child that doesn't understand, they're cognitively not
Right. There's so
necessarily
many kids with
at the
autism
level
that
of
you
their
don't
age. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or one little guy, he's 4, he looks pretty normal, but they said, developmentally he's like at 2, and he can say, and he can do so. I mean, he'll just walk up to somebody and punch him. And I'm like, yikes, and if so, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I feel like I do apologize a lot for my kids, but at the same time, I don't feel like we should always, and because I have definitely had fear of man and what is people going to think of me. And that gets wrapped up in pride too, for sure.
Yeah.
But I feel like I shouldn't have to say we're a foster child. They're coming from a lot of trauma. This is the reason why this behavior, because we feel like we need to cover ourselves. And like, I didn't teach him to go up and punch people like that. That was not my fault,
Mhm.
and that is like,
Can
because
you
you're going to think I'm a
imagine
bad parent.
if we wore on the, so when I ran our youth outreach, there was a skit or a drama that we did where the kids had to wear on the outside of them, or actually was on their back, whatever it was that they were struggling with, whatever
Yeah.
that fear was, whatever the sin was, whatever it was.
Yep.
And then, obviously it was about, we carry these, and they have these big heavy backpacks on them, and there was rocks in the backpacks. And then ultimately the kids each went up to the cross, and then they laid that backpack down at the cross,
Right.
because we weren't meant to carry that. And so there was a lesson behind that. Like, honestly, if we could see on the outside of people what they're going through, we would be a lot
Right.
more understanding. So if each of your kids that have been through a traumatic experience, have been pulled out of their homes, went into foster care, probably been in more than one placement
Bounced
before they even
around.
got
Yeah.
to you, okay? Because I think when they come to you, it's the stopping point. Like, you're like, they're not going anywhere else,
Right.
because you and your husband have a mission to adopt as many kids that you can, that God has called you
I
to.
mean,
And
not
you,
on purpose. That was not on purpose in
right,
the
what I'm saying
beginning.
is that
But
you don't want them to go. If they leave
yeah.
your house, it's because when a child leaves foster care from one house to another, it's because it didn't work out in that house.
Right.
Or
Right.
the parents didn't want to continue to deal with that.
Yeah.
You don't let that happen. Doesn't matter how difficult that child
Yeah.
is. So I would say yours is the forever home for them, for most
Yeah.
of them. Not always, because obviously you've fostered
Yeah.
over 30 kids and you haven't adopted all of them.
Right.
Many, they go back, some they go back to their homes, and many
Yeah.
move on. They age out, whatever. So, but if each of those kids wore on their back or wore on their body somewhere their trauma,
Right.
so when they're acting out in public, people would understand that. They would say, oh
Right.
my gosh, this kid was abused, or this kid, had his hands
Yeah.
duct taped and was put into a closet. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Right.
his mouth duct taped and he was shoved in a closet. You would be horrified that kid
Right.
had to go through that, and you would be much more compassionate. We don't
Right.
obviously have that all wearing out. So we look at somebody that looks typical or normal or whatever you said, You don't know why that kid's acting out.
Right,
And
exactly.
also you don't know what the mother is going through. You don't know if she's a foster mom,
Right.
an adoptive mom, or mom, those are her kids, and she's just so overwhelmed because she
Or just
doesn't
lost
know.
their spouse,
Right.
and so
They
their
lost
kids
their
are
spouse,
acting
the
out right
spouse
along.
left,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah, whatever. Yeah,
So that's probably a whole other episode right there. But I was just saying, like, we just really need to be kind because we
yeah.
never know what someone's going through.
I think that is something that is really important. To keep in mind, and I learned that big time when we lost our son, is that we don't ever know what somebody else is walking through. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can always put yourself into that place of like your worst day that you've had here on this earth, that might be what they're experiencing, and just give them grace. Give them grace, just like you wanted everybody that you came in contact with on that day to give you grace. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I would say that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned in the beginning of my journey. God has used this journey of being a special needs mom to literally transform my life in ways I never even knew that I needed healing. I didn't know
Right.
that. I didn't even know who I was then, now looking back. So I believe that this was a divine disruption to my life that was where I needed to go. I was going
Yes.
on the wrong journey, although I thought that was where I wanted. But one of the biggest things that I learned was that I would never again judge somebody by their parenting
Right.
because you just don't know. And so I probably would have been one of those people that would have seen a kid that was acting up in the store and said, why is that mom
Same.
letting them do that? Like, at least take them out of the store. Like, and I wouldn't go up to that person, but I know I would certainly have had a thought run through my head. Like, what's the matter with that kid? You know what I mean? But until I had Gracie, and I had already parented 4 kids and I was running an outreach of over hundreds and hundreds of kids, I still had no idea what I was doing with Gracie.
Right, right.
She was extreme. When she was mobile, she was extremely challenging. She was a runner. She was very obstinate. She was very cute. Thank God. I always say, thank God made her cute because, she definitely got away with that cute factor. But man, oh man, was she challenging even as a little one. And she would let go of you. You couldn't let go of her and she'd go running. I can't even tell you how many times I spent crying in the car after we were back in the car from something or a therapy or camp or whatever. And it was a bad report. And I'm like, I just felt like such a horrible mom because I didn't know how to handle this tiny little child. How'd she have so much control over me? You know what I'm saying? Like, how did she manipulate so much? And this cute little tiny child, and you just don't know. You honestly don't know. I had to relearn how to parent. I had to relearn who I was and all that. So I just know that, I actually had to ask God to forgive me for any time I ever judged another parent for what they were going through, what they had to do. I'm one of those parents that probably lets my kid have way too much screen time because it is what puts peace in the house. And like we said earlier, you got to do what works for you. If she doesn't have time on her tablet, and she does watch educational stuff. So she is learning. She actually taught herself how to do a lot more from school than I did because of the videos and things that she watched. But if I don't, then the house is in so much more stress and disruption because she needs constant 24/7 attention.
I think that's a whole nother fear.
I just can't do that. I can't live that way. So I'd rather her have some more screen time. And I know there's probably moms out there, people out there like, shame on you.
Well, that's
what I
a
mean?
fear. That's a fear, though. Is fear of what is everybody else going to think of me?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of fear that I think we experience that is kind of fear man-based in different kind of feeling, like in different ways. But what is the next mom going to think of me because I gave my kid the tablet for longer? And this mom over here, man, she is just great. She doesn't. Her kids have this exact time on the screen. What's screen time? They've got exactly this and that. Everybody does it differently, and we should not live in fear of being judged by the next mom.
Yeah.
And the only reason why we do is because we're all, us included,
it's our own
can be
insecurities
way
and
too
our own
much,
stuff.
and we're all too judgmental of the next mom. Just because we won't do it, just because we don't do it in our home, doesn't mean it's not okay for the next mom to do it. And why are we so quick to judge the next mom that is doing it when like you said, maybe they're just surviving? Hey, I was one of those moms that was like, TV in bedrooms, there is no way my kid is going to have a TV in their bedroom ever. And then da, 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 da. And then we're
I know.
like, we need a little bit more decompression time in the evening. We need time. Literally, we were just trying to survive up until bedtime because we learned that the later it gets, the more tired we get, the more worn out down everybody gets, the more arguing there is, the more short people are getting with each other. So we're like, well, what if we put a TV in the younger kids' rooms and let them go upstairs an hour or whatever before they normally would? And it has been a game changer here. And I was that person that was like, my kids don't need a TV in their bedroom. There's nothing good that comes from that. And there's still a part of me that thinks that. And then there's the other part of me that is living in reality and is like,
Right. You're living
survival.
in reality and
This
survival.
is survival mode.
Absolutely.
We are in survival mode right now. And there might be a point in time where that TV comes right back out, but it ain't today and it ain't tomorrow
Mhm.
and it ain't anytime in the near future that I can see. And,
Yeah.
judge me all you want for that.
Yeah.
I used to judge people
And
like
so the
me
thing
till
that we want to establish here, one of the things that was so important when we first created Junk Drawer Mamas is that we created a space, a safe space for moms that get it. Those moms
yes.
that get like, yep, you got to have a TV in the room. Yep, I have to let her
Yes.
be on screen time. You got to do whatever works. So the one of the biggest fears is like somebody saying to you, I would never let my kid do that. You're letting them manipulate you. Even my own family members have said that. I wouldn't let her do that. Okay, well then you come over and try it because I've tried everything. Even your
Right.
spouse can say that, and they
Right.
just walk away, and you're stuck trying to get the kid to obey or
And
trying to
feeling
get the
like a
kid
bad
to.
mom because you're not doing
Yes.
it like everybody
I'm
else
like, I
thinks you
am
should
more
do
than
it.
happy to let you try it because I've tried everything and I'm not allowing her to manipulate, but I'm saying I can't change the fact that she's having a full on meltdown. I can sit there with her and while she's having the meltdown, I could try to encourage her. I could try to punish her. Nothing really
Well,
works. She just
yep.
kind of has to go through it.
And let's face
And
it,
it
it's
might
never
disrupt the
gonna
event that we're at.
right.
You
And
know
it's
what I mean?
never gonna look right for every
Yeah.
person you're around. You can to that one couple that came up and said, it's been a pleasure dining next to you guys.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my gosh. The next table over probably thought, oh my gosh, these people they got so many kids.
Yes.
I wish they would just go away. Why do they have to sit next to it? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we've got to learn to not be afraid of what people are going to think, what people are going to say, how people look at us, how what
Mm-hmm.
people feel, and just be comfortable with what we're doing, partnering with God, of course, and knowing that we are parenting to the best of our ability and being obedient to what God's asked us to do in parenting our kiddos and
Yeah.
other people's kiddos and whatever that looks like. And yes, give ourselves grace because we are going to make mistakes just like
This is
anybody
why God
else.
told me to name Gracie Grace.
Right.
It is because she was
Yes.
supposed to be named Zoe. And I just
Yeah.
felt at the last minute it was supposed to be Grace. And man, did not even realize how
Yes.
prophetic that was that I was going to need that.
Yeah. Well, and we know walking through this every single day when you get up, you might get up and like, oh, I've got time with God. And then as soon as that, like Joyce Meyer always says, I would be the best Christian, just such great time with God all day studying until my kids came through the door. Okay, they got
Right.
home from school. And then, she was fine when she was
Yep.
by herself. Aren't we all? I
Yes.
mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then you have to start interacting with people and it's not always
Mm-hmm.
easy. So, yeah, we need grace every day, and God gives us that
Mm-hmm.
every single day. But there's so many things I feel like in parenting and being moms to be fearful of, to get tripped up in, and what if this and what if that, and so much of it will never ever happen, and we've already got ourselves wound so tight in this little ball of fear that sometimes you can't even I don't feel like you can get out of it, don't feel like you can break out of it because it's the what if, the what if, the what if. When my kids were little, and I still am not good with this, is I never let my kids spend the night anywhere because you hear all these horror stories of my kids spent the night here and they were abused by this person or
Mm.
the brother or the dad or the whatever. And there's still a fear that I have there. But if we're not careful, we can get so caught up in what that looks like that we don't even let we control our kids because based off of our own fears. And
Yeah.
and there's got to be
That has a lot to
a
do with the
balance. There's
helicopter
got to be
mom
a
that's like
right.
won't let they're hovering over, won't let their
Versus
kid
the
do
mom that lets her
anything.
kids play in the street. There's got to be a balance. We don't
Mm-hmm.
want our kids playing in the street, but we also have
Right.
got to let the kids be kids and let them live and not ruin their whole childhood based off of our own fears. After
Yeah.
we lost our son, he was hit by a car, at 17, and after we lost him, there was a few years following that, like, there was a bus driver that wanted my kids to stand in this one exact spot, and I mean, I was mad, I was angry, I talked to they're like, "Well, they need to be in," and I'm like, "They're not gonna cross that street." These guys were little, they were like 5, 6, and I'm like, "They are not doing that," and I mean, I I was angry and I was like, I'm not going to risk that. There's certain, and that was the fear. That was the fear of,
Mhm.
you experience this, so this could happen again. And that's
Yeah.
something that I've had to let go, and I have over the years for sure. But a lot of times, the fears that we have is just because of experiences in life, things
Experiences.
that
Sometimes it's
right,
a healthy fear. It's when
right,
you take it to the extreme.
yes,
'Cause I have my middle son got hit by a car too. When that happened, he got hit and the person didn't stop. So
yeah,
when we ended up going to court, he ended up getting the ticket because he was in the crosswalk, but the person didn't even stop, hit him, and then kept on going. So it was kind of a hit and run. And the thing is that you think that number one, your kid's going to pay attention to what they have to do. And you also think that there's going to be the common sense of the driver that they would be careful or that they would stop,
right,
and they don't. So he ended up having to learn how to walk all over again. His entire pelvis was completely crushed and his hip and all that. He had to have that all reconstructed and he had to learn how to walk again. So it was a devastating accident, obviously not as devastating as yours. But the fear, if they're going to be in the crosswalk again, are they going to pay attention? Is the person driving going to, so then you've got all these fears and they could consume you to the point where you don't even want your kid to leave the house. You know what I mean?
right,
You're afraid every time they go. And it wasn't even so much that I was afraid that it would happen to him. I was afraid that it would happen to my younger son. You know what I mean? I didn't have that fear until that happened. And then
right.
that happened. And it's like now all of a sudden your senses are heightened and more aware that somebody could hit your kid and they could just
Yeah.
keep on
Well,
going.
and the
You know
enemy
what I mean?
uses that. Obviously, he's
Yeah.
like,
I don't even
oh,
remember
they've
how
got
they
a
found the
weakness here.
person
Yeah,
because she didn't stop, but they did find the person and she had to go to court. But she got away with it. And because it was my son that actually was in the crosswalk and she had the right of way apparently. So here we are in court. He's in a wheelchair, pushing him into court. And she didn't even have the nerve to come up and even say, I'm so sorry that we did this. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I could do? Nothing. She
yeah,
just kind of was silent and then walked out of the courtroom. And that changes your whole view of things. It
yeah,
really does,
yep,
So again, that could
yeah,
cause fears that you didn't even have. And you got to be careful
yes,
that not to let the enemy come in and take that over. So, anyway, here's what I want to do because we, again, got way off topic and we didn't do this, but I think this is what the Holy Spirit is doing. So, I want to remind everybody that before Christine and I get on an episode, we decompress for the week. We just kind of share what
mm-hmm.
we're going through so that we're in a safe space, that we want to make sure we're not recording from a place of being burnt out or weary. We want to be fresh for you guys. We want to bring what God wants to us. We're just the
Yes,
vessels that he speaks through. So we always just talk, as friends and moms, just to get off our chest what we're going through. We're that sounding board. And then we pray for all of you that are listening. And we pray that God would speak through us to give the right message. So originally, we were going to just go through all the different things that moms are afraid of, especially a mom dealing with an extreme situation or special
yeah,
needs. But here's what I'm sensing in my spirit is that this is too big of a topic to put all into one. So the last episode, what we did was how fear we realized was a lot had to do with grief.
yes,
This one, honestly, the whole entire episode really was about the fear of what other people think of us,
yep,
the fear of being out in public. We created a whole entire episode, which we could probably keep on talking about. So I want to leave us with some, biblical truths in that. Like we were just talking about that. We got to be very careful to not allow the enemy to come in. Is it false fear? There's nothing wrong with healthy fear or healthy concern for your children, but
right,
is it becoming a detriment to your family? Are you one of those people that you're afraid for your kid to even go outside because of that? Are you so worried about what the people think of you that you won't leave the house? Or that you end up feeling like now you feel self-condemned and ashamed because you feel
right,
like you're a
right,
bad mom. That is from the enemy 100%, and that is not what God has called us to. He has equipped us. He has chosen us. This is a sacred role that he's called us to be moms, especially if you're navigating a situation that is more extreme than the average parent. And so we want to be able to find the grace in that and the strength in that. And it's not meant for us to be, in this place of being so gripped with fear that you can't even take a step forward. And
right,
so many people are in that. But I can see where each particular episode could lead into like the whole episode around one thing of fear. So what I
right,
wanted to
right,
say is here's a couple of the categories that we want to talk about because we're getting at the top of the hour here. I don't want it to go too long.
yeah,
So some of the categories were health and medical, the declining health. So here's one for me. Okay. I have been told since Gracie was born that people with Down syndrome, they have a short lifespan. that the average Down syndrome adult doesn't live past 40 or 50. Okay. Now, I don't know statistically if that's true or not, but there's always a concern. You know what I mean? Are we going to have to walk through that? Now, I also know there's stories where they live a long, healthy life, but will her health decline? Will it get worse? If you do have a child that does have a medical diagnosis where it is more life threatening, because obviously Gracie's diagnosis is not life threatening, but there are lots of children out there that have a life threatening diagnosis. And though you live in fear of what's going to happen for their future, is it going to get worse? Are you going to be able to have the resources? So that's a big one that I think might be an episode all by itself. Independence and functionality. Will they be able to live outside of our house? And what does that look like? I mentioned on one of the videos that I recorded, like, I don't know if she's going to live on our property, if she's going to live like in a little, they call them the mother-in-law apartment, where it's attached to your house. Is she going to live independently? Will she be an independent living outside of our property altogether? I don't know what that's going to look like, but will she be able to function on her own? Will she be able to make enough income to be able to do that? Or are we always going to be able to support that? Because again, there's people with Down syndrome that have gone on, they drive and they've gone to college and they get married. I don't know. She's only 14 and she's very socially delayed. So I don't know what that looks like for her. That doesn't mean it's always going to be like that, but I don't have a visual of the future yet.
Right.
Because I only can base it on what I can see right now. And right now I see that she's going to need a lot of care. So the provision and finances, are we going to be able to have enough to provide for them for whatever it is that they need? Because there's a lot more care if you have to have therapies and things like that. Social and emotional development. Will he or she have friends? Will they be able to find a good, strong structure of friendships around them? Educational concerns. I struggle with this with Gracie all the time. I homeschool her, but honestly, there's so many things. Like, I don't even know if I'm qualified to do that, but putting her in public school isn't necessarily an option for us right now. I mean, it's something that we toss back and forth. But when she was in public school, there was a lot more behavior issues that she had. So I think that the educational thing right there is a fear. It's something that's, it's a concern. So when we say fear, it's not necessarily like you're afraid of it. It's a concern. It weighs on your heart, or it's a worry that you have. How do I educate them properly? Is homeschooling better? Is public school better? Should she be mainstream? Should they not be mainstream? Should they be in a special ed class? So there's that. And then there's the advocacy and support after we're gone. So this is a big one that I think definitely needs to be all on their own. Like what, you're talking about life insurance and letters of intent and who would care for them and all of that. So that's something that we want to give you. My husband and I used to be financial planners and we taught on that. So that's something that we can bring to you. And then there's spiritual concerns. Will they grow to know God? And I do believe they do. I think that's one that I probably have the least amount of worry for, because it's crazy how much Gracie loves Jesus. She seems to understand the spirit realm way more than most adults. I feel like she has these patients. Sometimes I ask her, like, who are you talking to? And I'll say, is that a spirit that you're talking to? Like, good or bad? Like, she's always having these conversations and she seems to just understand things. And yesterday when we were leaving church, she said to me, I need to study my Bible. And I said, you want to study the Bible? I said, you want to do it together? She goes, no, I need to do it for myself. And I was like, can you read the Bible? Anyway, but she's got such a heart to do that. But there's some that you don't know. You don't know if they're, are they going to really understand that?
Right.
So anyway, there's probably a lot more that we could discuss on that. And then also I wanted to talk about, what does fear do for a mom? You know what I mean? So I know we're getting to the point where your kids are about to come in from the school bus and all that. So I don't want to go too much longer. What does fear, how does that affect moms? It steals our present joy. It clouds our decision-making, as we talked about. It can cloud our decision-making. Are we making the right decisions? Or are we making them out of fear? It turns into control, anxiety, even to the point of shutdown.
Yep.
It wears us out trying to plan every possible outcome. And that's the thing, I think, as a special needs mom, I always have to be prepared. Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? That bug out bag that we talked about. You have to all these extra things, the snacks, the extra clothes, the pads, the wipes, the everything that you need. And what happens if it's loud? Make sure you have her headphones. And, what if she wants to go? Do we have an exit strategy? That kind of thing. And then it causes us to grieve a future that hasn't even happened yet. We're grieving about a future that we don't even know if that's going to be the way it is or not. And then we want to, again, leave you with some scriptures and biblical truths on what God actually says. Because one of the things I think is one of the most powerful statements that Christine ever said, and we've shared it multiple times, is that whenever there's fear there or worry, then we're picturing a future without God in it. And everything we do here is to show you how to partner with God, how to walk this journey. He chose us. He equipped us. We are going to be able to do this. The enemy's going to come in and try to kill, steal, and destroy and get you discouraged and get you feel like you're the bad mom, or that you can't do that. This is, your life is just going to be this way. I just have to accept it. And that is not at all what God intended for us. But he will use this journey, this struggle, the trials to develop you. Yeah. You are being refined in the refiner's fire. And this is the vehicle that he chose for us. And it's parenting. Other people might be dealing with a marriage issue, a financial issue, a health concern, whatever it might be. This is the journey that we're on, and he will use it to bring out the best in us and our child and our future. And we just have to trust him that he's the one that has the blueprint, and that there's no need for us to worry. There's not an ounce of worry it's going to bring any extra to our life. It's only going to cause that lack of joy and peace and that, So anyway, I just wanted to share that. We thought we were going to get through a whole lot more, but I feel like maybe these episodes are by themselves. So this one was a good one. It was all about, the fear of what other people think, which is a big one for me, because I never know from one outing to another. Is Gracie going to be good, full of hugs and kisses and, words of affirmation to everybody she meets? Or is that going to be the time that she's having a meltdown on the middle of the floor and I can't get her to get up, and I'm crying on the way home in the car as she's trying to apologize to me for the 100th time that she acted that way. You know what I mean? So anyway, right. If you're one of those moms, I get you. I feel you, girl. I am right there with you.
Yes.
Absolutely. So anyway, this was a good episode. I think these are always healing for us too. So I hope that if anything we said encouraged you, we didn't give you a whole lot of tips in this one. But, even if it's just us sharing our story with you, where you could say, that happens to me. I get it. There's two other moms out there that get it. You're not alone. And honestly, there's a whole tribe of us out there. But I'm just saying, if anything we said, you're like, yep, I've done that. I've been there. You can at least feel like you got two friends, two women, two moms on your side that were right there with you. So then I would say then it was a good episode. So anyway, any last parting words? I can hear your kiddos in the background.
Yes, it's probably going to get loud. No, just we are getting ready to start the summer fun challenge here with kids in school. So I hope you join us in our community on Facebook and share your pictures, your posts of the fun stuff you're doing with your kiddos this summer, and tips and tricks and all the fun stuff.
Yeah. And she mentioned when we were doing our planning meeting before this, she said that we want to do a summer fun bucket list.
Yes.
So if you are already in the community, or you follow us on any of these platforms and you want to pop it in the comment or email us, give us a bucket list item that you would love to do this summer. And so I'd like to have ideas for kids that maybe do have sensory issues like Gracie, where I couldn't go to a big park or do a big zoo trip, or even a lot of these science centers where they have sensory rooms and things. Even that for her is a lot. So it could be just something at home that we do together, but then also, what are those big things that you wish it could be on your bucket list? If time or money were no object, what would you do? That maybe we could all enjoy doing ourselves. So yes, please join the Summer Fun Challenge. We're going to keep bringing that to us, and we would welcome all your tips, tricks, and even if it's just a food hack for the summer, snack, whatever.
Yes. Help a mama out. Yep.
Help a mama out. # Summer Fun Challenge. Anyway, we love you guys. We can't wait to come back again. Have an awesome week, and we will continue this journey down the road of breaking off all this unnecessary fear, because that is not how God created us, and we will not partner with the enemy on that. We will partner with God on this. So anyway, have an awesome week, and we love you, and we will see you again soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us and listening to the Junk Drawer Mamas podcast. If today's episode encouraged you, share it with a mom who could use a little extra love and support. We'd love to hear from you too. Leave us a review and let us know what you think, or send us your ideas for what you want us to tackle in the junk drawer. You can email us anytime at junkdrawermamas@gmail.com. Stay connected with us on social media. Follow Dina at Specially Empowered Moms and Christina at Faith Through Foster Care for more encouragement and updates on our upcoming books. From two mamas in the throes of extreme parenting, we want you to know that you're doing a great job, mama, and you don't have to have it all together. But what's hidden can't be healed, so let's keep sorting through it together, one step, one story, and one laugh at a time. See you next time when we tackle another item in the junk drawer of life. Have an awesome week.